What allows some people to remain calm in chaos while others completely lose control? Why do some seem immune to criticism, betrayal, and disappointment, while a single careless comment can leave you shattered? The answer lies in something Socrates discovered over 2,400 years ago, something most people still don't understand. You don't need to control the world around you. You only need to master what happens inside you. What if I told you there's a proven way to become emotionally unbreakable, to stop letting other people's words ruin your day, to turn every obstacle into an opportunity? Stay with me until the end of this video, because the final insight I'm about to share is so powerful it can completely change how you react to everything in your life. Socrates walked barefoot through the streets of Athens, dressed in simple clothes, provoking the most powerful people in the city with uncomfortable questions. He was mocked, publicly humiliated, labeled a madman and a corrupter of the youth. And do you know how he reacted? He didn't. He simply kept doing what he believed was right, because he had discovered something very few people ever grasp. The power over your emotions does not belong to those who insult you, criticize you, or reject you. That power is, and always has been, yours. Have you noticed how much time and energy we waste trying to control things we can't control? We try to make people like us. We try to force circumstances to be perfect. We hope everything lines up just right, and when it doesn't, we become frustrated, anxious, angry. But Socrates taught something revolutionary. Stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start mastering the only thing you truly can, your thoughts and your reactions. Picture this scene. Socrates stands trial before 500 Athenian jurors. He's accused of corrupting the youth and denying the city's gods. The punishment could be death. Most people would be terrified, begging for mercy, doing anything to save their own lives. But not Socrates. He remains calm, composed, even ironic. Why? Because he understood that fear of death, like any destructive emotion, is a choice. And he chose not to be afraid. Now think about your own life. How many times has someone else's bad mood ruined your entire day? How many nights have you lost sleep over unfair criticism? How often have you felt powerless in the face of circumstances? Here's the hard truth no one likes to hear. You've given too much power to people and situations that don't deserve it, and until you take that power back, you'll remain a prisoner of your emotions. Socrates famously said that an unexamined life is not worth living. What did he mean by that? That most people live on autopilot, reacting instinctively to everything without ever questioning why. Someone insults you and you instantly get angry. Someone rejects you and you immediately feel inferior. But what if you paused to examine those reactions? What if you realized they're just mental patterns, patterns you can change? Let me ask you a question that might shake you. Who is really in control of your emotional life, you or external circumstances? If the answer is circumstances, then you're living like a slave. And Socrates, like the Stoics who came after him, believed that true freedom is inner freedom, the ability to choose how you interpret and respond to what happens to you. Here's something few people know. Socrates had a wife named Xanthippe, famous for having an extremely difficult temperament. She constantly criticized him, yelled at him, even humiliated him in public. And how did Socrates respond? With patience and sometimes humor. When someone asked how he endured it, he replied that living with Xanthippe was like training to deal with any difficult person in the world. He turned what could have been suffering into an opportunity to strengthen his emotional discipline. That's the core lesson. You don't choose what happens to you, but you always choose how you respond. Always. And when this stops being just a nice quote and becomes a lived truth, your life changes completely. Because no one else has the power to destroy you emotionally. You become a fortress. But pay attention. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending nothing affects you. It means recognizing that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies your power of choice. Socrates wasn't cold or emotionless. He simply chose his responses consciously instead of reacting impulsively like most people do. So now I ask you, are you ready to take back control? Because what I'm about to share next will give you practical tools to apply this wisdom in your own life. And I promise you, by the time we reach the final revelation, you'll never look at your emotions the same way again. Have you ever noticed how most people go through life blaming others for how they feel? My boss stressed me out. My partner made me sad. That comment made me furious. But hold on a second. Who's really in charge here? Socrates had an answer that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. No one can make you feel anything without your permission, and that changes everything. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. One day, Socrates was walking through the Agora, the main public square of Athens, when a man walked up to him and spat right in his face. Yes, you read that right. He spat in Socrates' face in front of everyone. The people around them were shocked. They expected Socrates to explode with anger or demand justice. Do you know what he did? He calmly wiped his face and kept walking as if nothing had happened. Later, when someone asked why he didn't react, Socrates replied, "If a donkey kicked me, would I take the donkey to court?" That story reveals something profound about emotional control. Socrates refused to let someone else's vile behavior determine his inner state. He understood that reacting with anger would give the aggressor exactly what he wanted, power over him, and Socrates was never going to hand that power to anyone. Now think about this for a moment. How many times have you handed over your emotional power to people who don't even deserve your attention? How many times have you lost your inner peace because of someone who probably isn't even thinking about you? That's what happens when you don't master your reactions. You become a puppet in someone else's hands. The Stoics, who were deeply influenced by Socrates, turned this idea into a complete philosophy. They taught something revolutionary. Divide everything in life into two categories, what you can control and what you can't. And here's the secret that can save your mental health. Focus only on what you can control. You can't control what people say about you. You can't control whether it rains on the day of your big event. You can't control the economy, politics, or whether someone loves you back. But do you know what you can control? Your thoughts, your interpretations, your actions, your reactions. That's all that truly matters. Socrates took this so seriously that even when he was sentenced to death, he remained calm and serene. His friends were crying, begging him to escape Athens and save his life. They had even bribed the guards to make his escape possible. But Socrates refused. Why? Because for him, living according to his principles was more important than simply staying alive. He had absolute control over his values and his choices, and no one could take that away from him. And if that sounds extreme, let me ask you something. Are you living according to your values, or are you constantly being pushed around by other people's opinions and expectations? Are you making conscious choices, or just reacting to whatever the world throws at you? Because the difference between a life of purpose and a life of quiet desperation is right there. Now, I know this isn't easy. From childhood, we're conditioned to react emotionally to everything. Someone praises us, and we're on cloud nine. Someone criticizes us, and we spiral. But Socrates taught that this emotional roller coaster is a prison, and the key to that prison is in your hands the entire time. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you've just been unfairly criticized at work. Your first impulse is probably to get angry, defend yourself, or replay the injustice over and over in your mind. But what if you paused and asked, just like Socrates would, does this criticism have any truth in it? If yes, what can I learn from it? If not, why should it affect me? Does this person have moral authority over me? Were their motives sincere or driven by insecurity, jealousy, or bad faith? When you start asking these questions, something almost magical happens. You step out of reactive mode and enter reflective mode. And in reflective mode, you have power. You consciously choose how to interpret the situation and how to respond. or whether to respond at all. Socrates also taught something many people misunderstand. Emotional control doesn't mean feeling nothing. It means not being controlled by what you feel. It's the difference between feeling anger and being ruled by anger, between feeling sadness and drowning in it, between feeling fear and being paralyzed by it. Think of emotions like ocean waves. They come and go. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf them instead of being dragged under. And the more you practice, the better you get, until one day the emotional storms that used to destroy you become nothing more than small ripples on the surface. And before we go on, if you're finding this useful and you can feel how this mindset could transform your life, hit the like button right now. It really helps the channel keep bringing you this kind of powerful knowledge. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now, because what comes next will give you practical tools to apply all of this in your daily life. Socrates had a method that completely unsettled people. He asked questions, a lot of questions. Those questions forced people to examine their own beliefs and contradictions. He did this because he believed most of our suffering comes from unexamined beliefs, ideas we accept without ever questioning them. For example, do you believe you need other people's approval to be happy? Where did that belief come from? Is it actually true? Do you believe external circumstances determine your inner peace? Why do you believe that? When you start questioning your core beliefs, you often discover that many of them have no solid foundation at all. And when you let go of those limiting beliefs, you free yourself from an enormous weight. Now let's get to what really matters, how you can apply this in real life, in your daily routine, your relationships, and your work. Because understanding theory is one thing, living it is something completely different. And Socrates wasn't just a philosopher with beautiful words, he lived exactly what he taught. And I'm going to show you how you can do the same. The first technique Socrates mastered is what I call the conscious pause. Between any event and your reaction, there is a space. Most people never notice that space because they react automatically on impulse. But once you train yourself to recognize that space, everything changes. Someone insults you, and instead of exploding immediately, you take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this worth reacting to? Does this person deserve my energy? Which response best represents the person I want to be? Let me give you a real example. Socrates had a student named Alcibiades, a young man who was incredibly talented, but also arrogant and impulsive. One day Alcibiades showed up furious because someone had spread rumors about him. He wanted immediate revenge. Socrates stopped him and asked, "Are these rumors true?" Alcibiades said no. Then Socrates asked, "If they're not true, why are you giving them power over you? If the people who know you understand they're false, what's the problem? And if people who don't know you believe them, why does their opinion matter?" That series of questions completely calmed Alcibiades down. He realized he was about to destroy his own peace over something that had no real power over him. And that leads us to the second technique. Question everything, especially your emotional reactions. When you feel anger, ask yourself, is this anger justified? Does it serve me in any way? When you feel anxious, ask, am I actually in danger? Or is my mind creating catastrophic scenarios that will probably never happen? The Stoics developed this idea even further. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Roman emperors and a devoted Stoic, wrote in his personal journal, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I will encounter people who are intrusive, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and antisocial. They are this way because they cannot distinguish good from evil, but I can, and therefore I cannot be harmed by them." Do you see how powerful that is? Marcus Aurelius mentally prepared himself for the challenges of the day. He didn't expect people to be perfect, so he wasn't disappointed when they weren't. He had already decided in advance that he would not allow other people's behavior to disturb his inner peace. This is the third technique, mental preparation. Visualize the challenges that might arise and decide ahead of time how you will respond. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that being cold or calculating? No, it's being intentional instead of reactive. It's consciously choosing who you want to be instead of letting circumstances decide for you. Socrates was known for his compassion and empathy, but he never allowed emotion to cloud his judgment or control his actions. Let me tell you another powerful story. During a war, Socrates served as a soldier. In one battle, his army was defeated and forced into a chaotic retreat. Most soldiers panicked and ran desperately to save their own lives. But Socrates remained calm, retreated in an orderly way, and even helped an injured companion. People later asked how he managed to stay so composed in the middle of total chaos. He replied, "Panic wouldn't save me, so why give in to it? Mental clarity, on the other hand, might." This brings us to the fourth technique. Recognize that destructive emotions never improve a situation. Ever. Anger doesn't solve problems. It creates more of them. Anxiety doesn't prepare you for the future. It paralyzes you in the present. Excessive fear doesn't protect you. It prevents you from acting. When you truly understand this at a deep level, it becomes easier to choose more constructive responses. But here's something I need to make very clear. This requires practice, a lot of practice. Socrates practiced this for decades. The Stoics practiced daily. You're not going to wake up tomorrow with perfect emotional control. But if you start today, if every day you practice the conscious pause, question your reactions, and mentally prepare for challenges, you'll begin to notice gradual but profound changes. Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher who was once a slave before gaining his freedom, taught something revolutionary. He said, "It's not events that disturb people, but their interpretation of those events." Two people can experience the exact same situation and react in completely opposite ways. Why? Because each one interprets the situation differently. Think about criticism at work. One person might interpret it as, "My boss hates me. I'm incompetent. I'm going to get fired. My life is over." Another person might think, "This is an opportunity to improve. Maybe I really made a mistake I can fix, or maybe my boss is just having a bad day and it has nothing to do with me." Same situation, completely different interpretations, totally different emotional outcomes. So the fifth technique is this. Examine your interpretations. When something happens, notice that your mind immediately creates a story about it. But that story is just one possible version, not absolute truth. You can choose an interpretation that's more useful, more constructive, and closer to reality. Socrates was a master of this. When he was sentenced to death, he could have interpreted it as, "Injustice has won. My life was wasted. These people are evil." But do you know how he interpreted it? As an opportunity to prove that a man can remain faithful to his principles until the very end, as a way to teach his students not to fear death, as an example of dignity in the face of adversity. And here's what's fascinating. More than 2,400 years later, we're still talking about Socrates. His name is synonymous with wisdom and integrity. Meanwhile, the names of the 500 jurors who condemned him have been forgotten by history. So who really won? Socrates lost a few years of life, but gained immortality. His accusers won that moment, but lost forever. That leads us to the sixth technique. Think long-term. Most of the things that disturb us today will be irrelevant in a week, a month, or a year. Marcus Aurelius used to ask himself, will this matter in 5 years? If the answer is no, then why is it stealing your peace right now? There is an exercise Socrates practiced every single day, one that the Stoics later turned into a sacred discipline. It's so simple you can start tonight, yet so powerful it can completely transform your emotional life. Most people will never do it because it requires something very few possess: brutal honesty with yourself. At the end of each day, before going to sleep, Socrates would sit down and review everything that had happened. He examined every interaction, every decision, every emotional reaction. and he asked himself three essential questions. What did I do well today? What could I have done better? How will I act differently tomorrow? No judgment, no guilt, just honest observation and a commitment to growth. The Stoics called this practice the evening examination. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and review everything I have done and said. I hide nothing from myself. I pass over nothing. Why should I fear any of my mistakes when I can say, 'See that you do not do this again, for now I forgive you'?" Notice the difference. Most people either completely ignore their mistakes or obsess over them in a destructive way, replaying them endlessly, drowning in guilt and shame. But the Stoic examination isn't about punishment. It's about learning. It's about becoming better. It's about recognizing destructive emotional patterns and consciously choosing to change them. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine that today someone cuts you off in traffic. You explode with anger. You honk, yell, curse. That night, during your examination, you review the moment and ask, why did I react that way? Did that person truly harm me or just irritate me for a few seconds? Did my anger change anything? No, it only raised my blood pressure and ruined my mood. How could I have reacted differently? I could have taken a deep breath, acknowledged the irritation, and chosen not to let it control me. I could have even considered that the other driver might be dealing with an emergency. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You begin to create more and more space between stimulus and response. The next time someone cuts you off, your mind automatically remembers the evening examination. You pause. You think twice before exploding. Over time, the angry reaction simply disappears. You become the kind of person nothing can shake. Socrates took this idea so seriously that he famously said, "An unexamined life is not worth living." He believed the highest human purpose was self-knowledge and self-improvement, and you cannot truly know or improve yourself without honestly examining your thoughts, emotions, and actions. But here's the crucial point. This only works if you are brutally honest with yourself. There's no benefit in self-deception, in justifying bad behavior, or blaming others. Socrates was known for openly admitting when he was wrong. He had no ego to protect. His only concern was truth and growth. And here's the paradox. The more you admit your flaws and mistakes, the stronger you become. Why? Because you stop living in fear of being exposed. You've already exposed yourself to yourself. You've already acknowledged your imperfections. And once you do that, no one has power over you. No one can humiliate you by revealing something you've already accepted. There's a story about Socrates that illustrates this perfectly. Someone once said to him, "You are the wisest man in Athens." Socrates replied, "If I am the wisest, it is only because I know that I know nothing, while others think they know when they do not." That intellectual humility was his greatest strength. He had no illusions about himself, and because of that, no criticism could destroy him. Now let's move to another powerful Stoic exercise, negative visualization. This may sound strange at first, but stay with me. The Stoics regularly imagined losing everything they had, their health, their wealth, their loved ones, their reputation. Why? To prepare emotionally, and to learn to value what they had while they still had it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Reflect on the fragility of all things. Today, someone is alive. Tomorrow they are dead. Today, someone is wealthy. Tomorrow they are a beggar. Today, someone is admired. Tomorrow they are forgotten." This wasn't pessimism. It was realism. It was preparation. When you practice negative visualization, two things happen. First, you stop taking things for granted. You begin to genuinely appreciate your present blessings. Second, when something bad actually happens, you're already partially prepared. The shock is smaller. The emotional devastation is reduced. Think about it like this. If you've never considered the possibility of losing your job and suddenly you're laid off, you feel completely lost. But if you've occasionally reflected on that possibility, thought about alternatives, prepared mentally, the layoff will still be painful, but not devastating. You already know you can recover. Socrates practiced this instinctively. He lived extremely simply, without luxury, without attachment to material things. Why? So that nothing could be taken from him. You can take my wealth? I never had much. You can take my status? I never cared about it. You can take my life? Death is inevitable anyway. And here is a deep truth that may change how you see everything. Most human suffering comes from attachment and unrealistic expectations. We attach ourselves to impermanent things and then suffer when we inevitably lose them. We create expectations about how life should be and then feel frustrated when reality doesn't match. The Stoics taught, choose acceptance over resistance. This doesn't mean passivity or resignation. It means recognizing reality as it is, not as you wish it were. From that honest recognition, you can act effectively. But as long as you're in denial or emotional resistance, you're wasting energy. Epictetus, who was enslaved for many years before gaining his freedom, taught, some things are up to us and some things are not. Up to us are our opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions. In short, whatever is our own doing. Not up to us are our body, property, reputation, or status. In short, whatever is not our own doing. When you truly internalize this distinction, your life changes. You stop fighting unwinnable battles. You stop suffering over things that were never under your control. And you redirect your energy to what truly matters. Your character, your virtues, your wisdom, your inner peace. Relationships are the ultimate test of emotional control. It's easy to keep your composure with strangers, but with the people closest to you, the ones you live with, love, and see every day, that's where things get hard. They know your weak spots. They know exactly what to say to push your buttons, and often they do it without even realizing it. And this is where the teachings of Socrates become absolutely essential. Remember when I mentioned Xanthippe, Socrates' wife? Historians describe her as one of the most difficult people to live with in all of Athens. A fiery temper, constant criticism, public humiliation. And Socrates, instead of becoming bitter or striking back, saw it as the best training imaginable. He used to say, if I can maintain my inner peace with Xanthippe, I can maintain it with anyone. But let's be real. How do you actually do that in practice? How do you stay calm when your partner criticizes you unfairly, when your father disrespects you, when your teenage child challenges you, when a friend betrays you? Because theory means nothing if you can't apply it when it matters most. The first thing Socrates taught about relationships is this: separate the person from the behavior. When someone close to you acts hurtfully, your instinct is to take it personally, to assume they're cruel or that they hate you. But Socrates would ask, is this person acting from ignorance, pain, fear, or genuine malice? Most of the time, it's one of the first three. Think about it. When someone harshly criticizes you, they're often projecting their own insecurities. When someone tries to control you, it's usually because they're afraid of losing you. When someone hurts you, more often than not, it's because they're hurting themselves. Understanding this doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it gives you perspective, and perspective is power. Marcus Aurelius, who dealt daily with betrayal, conspiracies, and constant criticism as emperor, wrote something profound. When someone offends you, immediately consider what belief about good and evil led them to act that way. Once you see that, you'll feel compassion for them. Because either they are mistaken about what is good, or they are acting from ignorance. And in both cases, compassion, not anger, is the right response. But be careful here. Compassion does not mean tolerating abuse. Socrates had compassion for everyone, but he also had firm boundaries. When the authorities of Athens ordered him to stop philosophizing, he refused, politely but firmly. When they demanded he betray his principles, he chose death instead. Compassion paired with strength, that's the formula. In relationships, this means I understand why you're acting this way. I empathize with your pain, but I will not allow this behavior to keep harming me. You can forgive without staying close. You can wish someone well without accepting mistreatment. Here's something that can truly set you free. You are not responsible for other people's emotions. Read that again. You are not responsible for other people's emotions. So many people live trapped trying to make everyone happy, walking on eggshells, constantly sacrificing themselves to avoid conflict. But that's not virtue, that's self-destruction. Socrates annoyed half of Athens with his uncomfortable questions. He knew it, and he kept going anyway, because he believed it was right. He couldn't control how people reacted to the truth. He could only control whether he spoke it. And he chose truth, regardless of the emotional consequences for others. That isn't a lack of empathy. It's recognizing that each person is responsible for processing their own emotions. If you speak a necessary truth and someone gets angry, that anger belongs to them, not you. Of course, there's a difference between speaking a hard truth and being deliberately cruel, and deep down, you know the difference. Now, relationships also involve forgiveness, and the Stoics had a powerful view on this. They didn't forgive because the other person deserved it, or because they apologized. They forgave because holding resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is self-liberation, not a gift to the offender. Seneca wrote, "No one can harm another without first harming himself." When you cling to anger, resentment, and bitterness, you're choosing to wound yourself again and again. The person who hurt you has likely moved on, but you keep replaying the moment, feeding the pain, poisoning your own heart. Let me tell you a powerful story. One of Socrates' students was betrayed by a close friend who spread vicious lies about him. Consumed by rage, the student plotted revenge. Socrates asked him, "How long will you devote your life to this person?" "Until I get my revenge," the student replied. Socrates said, "Then this person will control your thoughts, emotions, and actions for as long as you choose to seek revenge. So tell me, who is really the prisoner here?" That question changed everything. The student realized that while his former friend was living freely, he himself was chained by resentment. So he did something radical. He forgave, not because the other deserved it, but because he deserved peace. And what about romantic relationships? That's where things get even more complicated, because there's love, vulnerability, and expectation. But Stoic principles apply here too. You cannot control whether your partner will love you forever, remain faithful, or meet every expectation. You can only control how you show up, your values, your character, your responses. The Stoics taught something revolutionary about love without attachment. It sounds contradictory, but it isn't. It means loving deeply, being present, valuing the other person, without turning them into your source of happiness or identity. Because if you depend emotionally on someone to be happy, you are not free. And healthy relationships exist between two free people who choose each other, not two dependent people who need each other. Socrates loved his friends and students deeply. When he was sentenced to death, they wept in despair. But Socrates remained calm. Why? Because his emotional well-being didn't depend on physical survival. He had already made peace with mortality, impermanence, and the transient nature of all things. And here is the hardest lesson of all. Everything you love will eventually be lost. Through death, separation, change, or time, nothing is permanent. The Stoics didn't say this to be pessimistic. They said it so you would cherish the present more deeply. So you would love as if it were the last time. So you wouldn't waste your life on petty arguments, fragile pride, or small resentments. Marcus Aurelius, when he embraced his children, reminded himself, "They are mortal. Tomorrow they may be gone." That didn't weaken his love. It intensified it, because he was fully present, fully grateful, fully aware of the privilege of that moment. So, in your relationships, practice mindful presence. When you're with someone you love, truly be there. Not physically present while your mind is lost in your phone or your worries. Practice gratitude. Every day, acknowledge the blessing of the people in your life. And practice acceptance. Accept that people are imperfect, that they will disappoint you at times, that they have their own battles just like you. And when conflict inevitably arises, remember this: you always have a choice in how you respond. Always. That is your unbreakable freedom. No one can take it from you unless you hand it over willingly. And now we arrive at the final part, where I'll reveal the last and most powerful lesson Socrates left behind. It's something very few people truly understand, but it has the power to transform not just your emotions, but your entire life. Here we arrive at the most important moment of this video, the revelation that can change everything for you. It's the final lesson Socrates left behind, not through his words, but through his final actions. And it's something most people will never truly understand. But if you do, nothing will have power over your emotions anymore. Socrates was in prison, awaiting death. His friends had bribed the guards. Everything was ready for his escape. He had every reason to flee. He was innocent. The sentence was unjust. He still had so much to teach, and his family needed him. But he refused. And when asked why, he gave an answer that has echoed through the centuries. To fear death is to assume we know something we do not know. Let that sink in. What Socrates was saying is that most of our fears, anxieties, and suffering come from assuming we know what is good or bad for us, when in truth we don't. You think losing that job is terrible, but what if it's the push you need to find your true calling? You think that breakup was devastating, but what if it freed you from a relationship that was holding you back? Socrates' final lesson is this: true wisdom lies in recognizing your ignorance about what truly matters. And when you recognize this, when you deeply accept that you can't predict the future, that you don't know the real meaning of events, something almost miraculous happens. You stop resisting life and start flowing with it. The Stoics later developed this idea into the concept of amor fati, which means love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but loving what happens, because everything that occurs is part of a greater order you cannot fully comprehend. Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoicism, said, "My formula for human greatness is amor fati, wanting nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not for all eternity." Not merely bearing what is necessary, but loving it. Imagine living like that. Imagine not just accepting difficulties, but seeing them as exactly what you need to grow. Imagine not resisting when things don't go according to plan, but trusting that there is a reason, even if you can't see it yet. This is the highest level of emotional mastery, when you no longer need to control anything because you trust the process of life itself. Socrates drank the hemlock, the poison that would kill him, as calmly as if he were taking medicine. His final moments were spent in quiet, philosophical conversation with his friends. He was completely at peace, not because he was brave or stoic in a superficial sense, but because he genuinely did not see death as something terrible. It was simply a transition, perhaps to something better, perhaps to nothing at all. Either way, nothing to fear. And here is the deepest revelation of all. When you stop fearing death, you stop fearing anything, because what is criticism compared to death? What is rejection, failure, or financial loss? All of it becomes insignificant once you've made peace with the only certainty of life, your mortality. The Stoics practiced an exercise called memento mori, remember that you will die, not to be morbid, but to live with intensity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think. When you live with awareness of death, you stop wasting time on trivial things. You stop postponing what truly matters. You stop worrying about other people's opinions. Think about it. On your deathbed, will you regret not impressing that coworker, not having more followers on social media, not buying that car? Of course not. You'll regret not loving more deeply, not living more authentically, not being more faithful to your values. So why not live now as if you were already on your deathbed, choosing only what truly matters? Socrates spent his entire life seeking truth, questioning, learning, teaching, and when his time came, he faced it with the same curiosity he had lived with. His last words were, "Crito, we owe a rooster to Asclepius. Don't forget to pay the debt." Even in his final moment, he was concerned with honoring commitments, with doing what was right. That is absolute integrity. So here is the great truth that will set you free. Ultimate emotional control does not come from techniques or strategies, though they help. It comes from living in alignment with your deepest values, from having a clear philosophy of life, from making peace with impermanence and uncertainty. When you have that, nothing external can truly shake you. You don't need to be perfect. Socrates wasn't. You will fail. You will have bad days. You will lose control sometimes. But if you keep practicing, examining yourself, and growing, it gets easier. The space between stimulus and response grows wider. You choose consciously instead of reacting automatically. And here's the most beautiful part of all. When you achieve this emotional mastery, when you become that unshakable rock, you don't just improve your own life. You become an example to everyone around you. Just as Socrates inspired Plato, who inspired Aristotle, who influenced all of Western civilization, you can inspire the people around you simply by living with integrity and wisdom. So I challenge you now. Start today. Tonight, do your first Stoic self-examination. Review your day honestly. Tomorrow morning, mentally prepare for challenges. During the day, practice the conscious pause. Question your interpretations. Separate what you can control from what you can't. And always remember, you are free. No one can imprison your mind. No one can force your choices. No one can control your reactions. This inner freedom is your birthright. Socrates merely reminded you of it. If you made it this far, write in the comments, "I choose my response." Let that be a public commitment to this new way of living. And if this video truly impacted you, if these ideas resonated deeply, don't keep them to yourself. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment, but applied knowledge is transformation. Subscribe to the channel now if you haven't already, because I'll keep bringing this kind of ancient wisdom applied to the modern world. On screen, I'll leave 2 videos that perfectly complement what you just learned. The first is about building unbreakable discipline using Stoic principles. The second reveals the biggest regrets people have on their deathbeds and how to avoid them. Watch them, because they'll expand your understanding even further. Always remember, you already have everything inside you to become emotionally invincible. Socrates proved this over 2,000 years ago. Now it's your turn to prove it to yourself. The journey starts now. The choice is yours. It always has been.